All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Matt Kozlowski. I'm the Vice President, Professional Services and Cybersecurity for the Winslow Technology Group. I'm joined today by Jeff Miller, Channel Account Manager for Arctic Wolf Networks. We have a really great session, a little different today, where we're going to go over human versus machine threat intelligence, which is better. And a lot of this has to do and kind of goes back to the RSA conference earlier this year. I couldn't think of a topic that in some ways is more timely, as this is cybersecurity month, and the theme of this month is kind of you know do your part, be smart, cyber smart, as a whole thing. So the human element and kind of the human aspect in a way of cybersecurity, certainly applied at RSA several months ago, and is surfacing again this month for cybersecurity month. We're just going to do a brief overview of the Winslow Technology Group, and then again, joined by Jeff Miller, we'll go through and talk about the human element. A little bit about Winslow Technology Group. So we're headquartered in Waltham, Mass, so right outside of Boston. We have offices in New York City and Charlotte. We specialize from desktop to data center and cloud. So whether it's virtual, hyper-converged, backup data protection, we have a solution and a service to go along with that, including a full range of consulting services and products for our cybersecurity portfolio. One thing that makes WTG a little bit different is that we really try to identify what we consider our game-changing technologies or technology partners, just like Arctic Wolf, and bring those to the market. So that's a little bit about WTG. WTG uses the NIST cybersecurity framework, the identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover, to inform our decisions and put together what we believe is a comprehensive cybersecurity portfolio, again, of products and services that applies to small companies all the way up to enterprise. Really, really great framework, easy to digest, and delivered correctly, really brings a comprehensive cybersecurity program to just about any organization. All right, with that, I'll introduce Jeff Miller. Jeff, want to give a shout out and introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you, Matt. It's a pleasure to work with Winslow, and thank you to everybody who's joined today. This is going to be fun. We learned a lot back in February at the RSA conference. It was kind of the last time that people were meeting in big numbers here, and I'm sure we'll get back to that at some point. But there's been some shifts with work from home. There's been a lot of shifts into the cloud, and some things that we'll talk about here today about kind of the new way of doing business in the current time that we're in. But one of the mega themes that was discussed back in February at the RSA conference was this idea of putting people back into the mix with cybersecurity. And I think if you look at the progression, people started seeing machine learning be introduced into platforms 5, even 10 years ago, and it's matured a lot, but we've started to over-rely on it to a detriment. So just to kind of level set on some terms here, the field of machine learning seeks to answer the question, how can we build computer systems that automatically improve with experience? And what are the fundamental laws that govern all learning processes? So machine learning, or ML as it's called, is a branch of artificial intelligence, and it's defined by the computer science Tom Mitchell as being the study of computer algorithms that allow computer programs to automatically improve through experience. Sounds good, right? And it is one of the ways that we expect to achieve artificial intelligence. Machine learning relies on working with small to large data sets by examining and comparing the data to find common patterns and explore nuances. Artificial intelligence, on the other hand, is more vast in scope. AI is the science of engineering, of making computers in ways that, until recently, we thought required human intelligence. Perhaps the most notable display of this was IBM's Deep Blue, the computer that defeated the world chess champion in 1997 by evaluating millions of moves at every turn. I think I remember that, and probably a lot of you do. Now, in terms of, there is a place for ML, there is a place for AI, and we'll talk about that. In our platform at Arctic Wolf, we're a security operations provider, and we're processing over 100 billion events, so logs and alerts that we're going through to find indicators of compromise in people's networks, that's on a daily basis. That's in excess of what the Department of Homeland Security is processing. For us to whittle this down into a manageable amount of logs and alerts, we necessarily need to use AI for visibility and make the data set smaller through machine learning. We also use machine learning for anomaly detection. That's this analysis piece, for clustering and DGA identification. The benefit of this is better efficacy with respect to detection and alerting. And then in terms of response, we're using AI to help with explaining the decisions that we make with respect to triage and remediation decisions from humans on our SOC team. The benefit here is faster response times. Really, the reason why Arctic Wolf exists is to answer the question, are the bad guys in my network, and quickly get them out to reduce the dwell time so that they can't do bad things. However, this is all good stuff. Machine learning does not solve every problem. So we'll talk about, again, the need for the human element in cybersecurity here. So again, back in February, the RSA conference this year, numerous submissions touch on the human dimension of security. The speakers pointed out that machine-based processes can't cure every ill. You still need to have human-to-human interaction and human decision-making to have a strong security posture. After all, humans need to tweak the machine learning algorithms, and humans need to investigate indicators of compromise. In the case of threat containment, something that we do with our platform, humans should be making the decision whether or not to contain a device that is deemed compromised by the various tools and machine learning algorithms at their fingertips. For example, it could be damaging to shut down a production web server in the middle of the day if entrusted to a code-based decision versus treating the situation more surgically. At Arctic Wolf, we've got an army of people to keep you safe, from security analysts, a research and development team, data scientists, and so on. Our security operations platform is designed as a concierge service led by human experts. So think of your own company. For companies that lack adequate headcount to watch logs and alerts across their network, endpoint, and cloud environments 24/7, we're a great fit. Also ask yourself how many of your IT headcount are dedicated to security versus dabbling in it when they get the time. And I say that out of all respect. I was one of those guys. I was somebody on an IT team who had to look at a SIM at the end of the day if I got a chance and other things didn't come in as priority. So at Arctic Wolf, we believe that something as important as your organization's security deserves a personalized and customized service, not just another software or hardware license. And we find that our customers want to pick up the phone and get a smart, competent answer on how a security risk impacts their company or environment, rather than making sense of some output from a piece of code. Now, we recently commissioned the Forrester Consulting Group to conduct a total economic impact study to examine the potential return on investment that companies might realize by utilizing security operations solutions versus standing up tools and trying to do it in-house. The quotes you see on this slide are from that survey, and this is just a month or two ago. As you can see, each of these organizations had issues that came down to a lack of both visibility and dedicated staff. We aim to solve both of those concerns. At Arctic Wolf, we provide security operations as a managed service that augments existing in-house IT and security teams' capabilities. The services under our umbrella include managed detection and response, continuous vulnerability management, as well as cloud infrastructure and SaaS monitoring. We're seeing that 47% of the incidents that we're picking up on from our over 2,500 customers have an origin in the cloud. The second thing out of the kind of the three mega themes that we saw at RSA was this idea of threat intelligence and sharing. And we'll talk about what this is and why it's important here. So threat intelligence is paramount in winning wars, and in some cases preventing them altogether. I was recently listening to a podcast about British intelligence in World War II and how that changed the face of the war. In the same vein, threat intelligence is a critical component of winning the war against hackers. A collection of companies working together to collect and share intelligence is always going to have better visibility into the threat landscape than just your organization on its own. The Arctic Wolf platform uses industry feeds for IP geolocation intelligence, and we're also leveraging threat intelligence feeds for file, domain, and URL reputation, as well as several sources of network threat intelligence. One of these feeds that we subscribe to is the FSISAC, the Financial Services Information Sharing and Analysis Center. And FSISAC's mission is to help assure resiliency and continuity of the global financial services infrastructure and individual firms against intentional acts that could significantly impact the financial sector's ability to provide critical services to the global economy. So not only is it wise, but it's also helping the global economy by sharing and receiving information from FSISAC. Now, how do we actually use this in our platform? So good threat intelligence starts with conducting an inventory of all the devices you have on your network. You can't protect it if you don't know what's there, after all. This includes listing manufacturers, devices, OS versions, patch levels, and so on. And this data is going to help companies identify devices that are vulnerable to exploits, as well as decide what threat intelligence is most likely to help their network. Once companies are tracking all the physical and virtual devices on their network, they need to begin to gather and correlate threat intelligence from log files and management consoles. This data needs to include endpoint, IoT devices, virtual data centers, and cloud workflows, not just your on-prem stuff. This is going to require a centralized collection and analysis system. Arctic Wolf's platform ingests logs files from on-premise infrastructure with a physical sensor. For off-network devices, again, in this work-from-home environment that we seem to be in, our endpoint agent lets us know what's installed on the system, patch levels, vulnerabilities, traffic flows, even if it's at your workstation behind your cable modem at home. And then for the cloud workflows that we're all connecting to, we have direct API integrations into Office 365, Salesforce, Azure, AWS, Umbrella, and the list goes on. Then once you have logs centralized, organizations need to evaluate and update logging and analytics platforms to make sure that local data can be combined with external intelligence. Correlating local and global intelligence provides critical insights, but because of the speed of today's attacks, this needs to be done quickly. And this means that threat intelligence must provide actionable information rather than just raw data, because that will require a lot of manual processing. That's where the machine learning assets of our security operation platform comes into play. And then finally on this piece, companies must use open standards to efficiently combine and correlate different data sets. This will help with efficiency, identifying indicators of compromise, and prioritizing the response to potential threats. Kind of the third thing that we saw as a big mega theme at RSA was this idea of professional and workforce development. You look at any statistic, you can Google it, there are more open positions than there are people to fill them in the realm of cybersecurity. It's a sad state of affairs for people who are trying to hire security experts in their company. And we'll talk about kind of what the state of that is and how we address that, because in working at Arctic Wolf, I came in and I wondered to myself, how do we prevent alert fatigue? How do we prevent the issues that everybody else is having? So I'll answer that as well. So when it comes to cybersecurity professionals, they've got little time to pause, little time to decompress. It's just a relentless wave of attack. I mean, I remember working for the New York State Attorney General's office, and we would have at least one major attempt to take our network down externally each week. We were changing upstream BGP routes. We were dealing with distributed denial of service attacks. We had ransomware trying to make its way in through our email system, and it was just a constant cat and mouse game. So this is what cybersecurity professionals are dealing with on a daily basis. And a lot of reports are suggesting that there's anywhere from 10,000 to more than 1 million security alerts per day per organization, with 80% of those being false positives. So if you can imagine being in that position where you're spending hours and hours and hours a day protecting your business, and 80% of what you're looking at is just a rabbit trail leading you nowhere, it's kind of deflating. And you know, cybersecurity professionals are also feeling the simmering frustrations with, like I said, understaffing. Then you add to that insufficient or lacking budgets, employees who continue to undo or undermine security efforts, thinking that it's not a priority, which I think, Matt, it was great that you went back and talked about October being National Cybersecurity Awareness Month, so we all have a part here. Just respect the people that are doing this in your company, because it's hard work, it's draining. And then add to that, kind of finally, is that leadership doesn't always take threats seriously enough, or maybe it's because they don't understand it. And I remember too being on the job back in the day, it was pagers, but today it's the constant text message of a system being down and having to kind of be on hold on a Friday. You can't really enjoy a picnic because you might have to go and into work. So security professionals are complaining about always being on the clock, always being on the job, at least mentally, compounded by no real downtime, long hours, long weekends. And you'll see this, the worst part of it is it's starting to affect people's mental and physical health from the CISO stress report that was produced recently. So it sounds pretty dire. These are facts. I've lived through it, so I know that this is realistic. But on a positive note, at Arctic Wolf, we strategically build out our security operations centers in areas that pump out top talent. Our Canadian Security Operations Center is nearby Conestoga, Ryerson, and Fanshawe, and those are all colleges with top-tier cybersecurity degree programs. People that want to do it, people that are in it for a career. We've also got interns as well. And then recently, as of the last few months, we've opened a few new security operations facilities, including our SOC in San Antonio, Texas. And if you know anything about San Antonio, it's home to our nation's second largest concentration of security experts and growing, second only to, of course, Washington, D.C. So rotating between security triage work and ticket work is one of the ways that we help our analysts not get burned out. If all you're doing all day is triaging thousands of alerts and chasing down false positives, that gets pretty old and you can burn out. So we try to switch people between triage and ticket work to prevent that burnout. And then our security analysts and our concierge security engineers actually rotate every 4 weeks. This furthermore helps us get rid of that alert fatigue. And then of course, if you don't have an upward trajectory, what do you have to work towards? You're just going to become a senior version of yourself. So we have documented career paths to stay in triage or to go to the concierge team, or even end up in leadership positions. And so we allow people and encourage people to do job shadowing and periodic assignments with other teams. And one of the things that does too is it gives a respect for other business units. I remember working at Time Warner Cable as a tier 3 support person, and I didn't really have a respect for the rest of what the company was doing because I didn't understand what they were doing. So as soon as I got put in a position to do these job rotations, it gave me a lot more respect for what the rest of the organization was doing. So in summary, again, we're kind of all working from home here, but this RSA conference is and has been and will continue to be the largest security conference in the world every year. And again, just as recent as of January, we learned that these 3 things in summary. An over-reliance on machine learning has led us to a 96% year-over-year increase in data breaches. We've got to get the human element back into cybersecurity. If your company is understaffed or can't afford security experts or security engineers, on average, it's 7 times less expensive to use Arctic Wolf than it is to go the DIY route. If you think about the fact that it'll take 5 to 8 people to get 24/7 coverage, let alone buying a SIN, let alone actually building out processes, it quickly becomes a math equation that works in your favor to consider Arctic Wolf as a security operations company to protect you. And then threat intelligence and sharing. We shouldn't be doing things in a vacuum. We have to be sharing what we're seeing. We have enough customers and enough internal knowledge that we're starting to see zero-day threats. And when we see something in one customer's environment, we can create a rule set and share that with other customers on the platform. And then lastly, like I said, it's incredibly important to understand that people need to have upward career trajectories. They need to feel important. They need not to be burned out. They need to take a break once in a while. So we have to let them off their leash. And some of the things we talked about on this slide is how we do that in particular at Arctic Wolf. So it's very important for us to make sure that our employees aren't overstressed and having the alert fatigue that so many companies are dealing with. With that being said, that's the predominant topic here. We'll leave the chat room open, but Matt has something to say about the Winslow security evaluation.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. Awesome content too, and like I just, what's interesting about this to me before I get into this, just some like thoughts hearing like you talk and even thinking back to RSA and kind of the human element. I guess like a couple things I thought of, like, a couple years ago, it's like maybe we not over rotated, but put like a real strong emphasis on focusing on like, educating users and training, which is a huge critical part of this. Don't get me wrong. But certainly there's an aspect of, I guess, like positive human input to it, not just like, oh, the human element means train like people that are going to click on bad phishing links. I guess like thinking about all of the kind of critical thinking that goes into making systems perform correctly. Kind of what you were saying, like making AI work a little, more human-like, I guess, or to our advantage certainly. But anyway, yeah. So Winslow, we have a NIST security evaluation. We're happy to do this at no cost to customers. What we do is we spend about half hour going through a series of questions that go through the identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover, basically the NIST cybersecurity framework. Coming out of it, you'll get a nice little report that shows you basically suggestions for areas of improvement. It might help you prioritize what to take a look at, and then some suggestions too for either products or services that might help you out.
And with that, again, we just at Arctic Wolf, Winslow's a 2-time Partner of the Year nationally. So they've got what it takes to wrap around the NIST framework around what we're talking about with security operations. We incredibly appreciate the partnership with Winslow. So if you do decide to have a conversation with us, you're in really good hands. And with that, Lori, were there any questions that came up in the chat room that we'd like to talk through today before we close out?
I don't see any. Matt, do you have any?
I'm just looking through the chat here to pull some out. I guess like Jeff, like just more of like a just more of like not a question in the chat, but comes up often when I'm like talking to people like in general. I guess like talk about like the human element like on the front line, if you will, with like engagement, and how the human element also is what bridges the gap between like a noisy SIEM and junk coming out of an EDR solution, like all that kind of stuff. Like how does the human element and kind of putting a human in front of that on the front line, interfacing with people, make a cybersecurity platform better than just providing maybe someone like a dashboard or something like that? Do you have any kind of anecdotal stories or information around that?
Yeah, that's a good point. So the one word I can highlight is conversation. You can't have unless you're crazy, you can't have a conversation with your tool set. You can't you can't talk
Jeff,
to a dashboard.
I've asked Power BI several questions and like never quite answers. So you're spot on there. Good, go on. Sorry.
Yeah. No, it's funny, but it's true. I mean, I remember being a user of a SIEM solution and constantly sitting there writing regular expressions, trying to say, well, if this and this and this happens, then I think that's a compromise, and coming up with ideas of what I thought was indicated a compromise in the network. And I couldn't really ask the SIEM any questions, and I couldn't validate it, and I couldn't ask, well, if I do this in my environment, if I make this change that we're considering, maybe changing the routing that we do from, let's say, regular routing to like split tunneling, is that going to improve my security? Is that going to improve bandwidth? Is there going to be a balance there, or is that maybe not a wise move to do? And so our concierge security team at our security operations center, they're conversational. So most of the phone calls we have with customers are not calls where they're under attack. It's actually phone calls where we have these regular meetings that are talking about the vulnerabilities that exist, the long-standing issues that we might see with things like Active Directory or the way that Office 365 is configured. And we're really there to think of us like an accountability partner. We're really there to help hold people accountable to their risk mitigation goals. And when we see patterns over time, we're talking about it, and we're asking the hard question of, hey, what gives? We've seen this the last 3 months. We've talked about what needs to be done to remediate it. What's going on here? This is leaving you exposed. So it's almost like having a gym buddy to hold you accountable. And you really can't get that when you have just a piece of software. It's really just going to give you a pile of alerts and things. And then I think a lot of the breaches that we're seeing, Matt, are because it's not that people don't have the information to act on. It's just they don't know how to prioritize it. So
Yeah.
hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, yeah. I think like another kind of aspect of like the human element, that's why this is just such like an interesting topic too. And like timely with kind of elections coming up and concerns around like election hacking, like always kind of looms too. But just like the I guess like the seriousness and importance that like Facebook and other social media providers have put into, provide some more safeguards around humans being manipulated by other humans with technology too. Or using social media in a nefarious way to like cause like physical harm to people, businesses, and organizations also. So just this human element is just a super interesting topic. I think really great presentation.
Thank you. Yeah, if we had to leave with one final thing, I would say, people ask me if I had to do one thing, Jeff, what would it be? Highest impact, lowest cost. What would I do today to make an impact? And I always tell people it's multi-factor authentication. I've got a YubiKey on my keychain. I'll never go back. And even if you're using a software authenticator on Android or iOS, somebody's going to get your password at some point. If they don't have your hardware token or they can't get in with a second factor, it's almost impossible to hack you. So that would be the one piece of advice. If you're not doing it, talk to the Winslow team. And we would honor any desire to have a conversation about this topic for anybody who's interested. Thank you, everybody, for joining, and have a wonderful day.
Thanks.